into those BP profits at 3:30, but the story that's just emerging in the last few minutes connects to the King's visit, and I think we should talk about it. We're going to talk about it. I was talking to Ian Dale earlier and wondering who, amongst the panoply of people in Congress, might be capable of a bit of barracking, a bit of heckling of the King, or not. There's no particular sort of evidence that is likely to happen, but I was wondering if it could. I did not think the thing that would make the King's visit arguably more uncomfortable would be comments by the UK ambassador to the United States, but it's looking as though that might be the case. In leaked remarks, Christian Turner, who took over from Peter Mandelson, has said the special relationship that America has is probably with Israel, not the UK. He also said it was extraordinary, his word, that the Epstein scandal hadn't affected sex offenders hadn't affected the sex offenders' US associates, which again we've remarked on in our conversations, haven't we? But that the fact that the British ambassador to Washington would say that America's only special relationship is probably with Israel, not the UK, that certainly risks embarrassing the King during his visit to the UK this week. Doesn't feel very ambassadorial, but let's find out more detail on it from Simon Marks, LBC's Washington correspondent. Do we know how these comments emerged, Simon?
Yes, Sheila, this is leaked audio that the Financial Times has just published of the now ambassador to the United States, Sir Christian Turner, and he was speaking just a matter of days, I think, possibly a couple of weeks after he started in the job here in Washington, D.C., speaking to a group of visiting students from the UK. And just to put all of this into context, at this moment, the band at the White House, I was just up on the roof of our building, and you could hear the band rehearsing for the formal arrival ceremony of the King and Queen at the White House, this state visit officially getting underway here within the next hour. And suddenly, this bombshell article has appeared by the Financial Times, in which Christian Turner, Peter Mandelson's successor as the UK's ambassador, someone who hosted the garden party at the British Embassy last night for the King, someone who is, of course, accompanying the King and Queen throughout this state visit, is articulating the view that the special relationship between the United States and the UK is essentially no more.
Special relationship is a phrase I try not to utter because it's quite nostalgic, it's quite backwards looking, and it has a lot of baggage about it. I think there is probably one country that has a special relationship with the United States, and that's probably Israel.
So that's Christian Turner saying that the only special relationship that he sees that the United States currently enjoys is between the United States and Israel. That flies in the face of everything that we've heard from the Prime Minister over the last many weeks, where he keeps pointing to various aspects of the bilateral relationship between the US and the UK and says, look, in intelligence sharing, in two-way trade, you can see the special relationship in action. Only yesterday, Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy told our colleague Ben Kentish that the special relationship between the US and UK was intact. This whole visit is about trying to promote the idea that the special relationship not only is still vibrant, but absolutely is something that can extend, as the King, we think, will say in his remarks to Congress today, for decades to come. And there is Sir Christian Turner, the new British ambassador to the United States, telling a group of students earlier this year that he doesn't buy it, that he thinks the special relationship is an overblown concept and an artifact of history.
Well, how damaging this is depends on what happens next week, doesn't it? And including what the King says in his speech this evening. Because what he seems to have been trying to get at there is that the relationship, I'll quote him a bit more, there's a deep history, affinity between us, particularly on defence and security. We're intertwined. The relationship will carry on if you want being, quote, special. But I think it's going to have to be different. Is that not just a fact that it's going to have to be different?
Well, it is a fact that it's going to have to be different, but that's not the way in which we have heard the Prime Minister characterise things over the course of the last many months. I mean, he, I think, would concede that the relationship is taking a different form now, but he has repeated again and again that the special relationship in action still exists. I mean, there are other comments in this interview, and we're still processing all the audio from it, that will also cause, I think, concern in London. Sir Christian Turner told the students that the British Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, had been on the ropes earlier this year from the fallout over the appointment of Lord Mandelson, and that the Labour Party might remove him after the local elections in May. I mean, again, one can argue that that's simply a statement of facts, but it's certainly not a set of facts that Number 10 would embrace. He also...
And it's an odd thing for an ambassador to be
It's a very odd thing for an ambassador. After everything that the embassy in this town has gone through over the course of the last several months, to be making these pretty undiplomatic comments in the earliest phases of your ambassadorship, I think will raise questions. He also says that senior British figures, including his predecessor, Lord Mandelson, and potentially the Prime Minister, that's a quote, had been brought down by the Mandelson affair. And he also makes the point that in the United States, and this again is a fact, it is extraordinary, in his words, that the scandal hasn't touched anybody, even as it is causing such difficulty for Number 10 and, of course, for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. But these comments about the special relationship, he doesn't like the phrase. He thinks it's nostalgic, backwards looking, and has a lot of baggage about it. I think he's going to raise questions here in Washington, D.C., and questions on both sides of the Atlantic about how Donald Trump is going to respond to a British ambassador who appears in many ways to be playing into Donald Trump's hands by saying, yeah, well, the special relationship's an artifact of history, it's a thing of the past, there's too much baggage associated with it. I mean, that's very much not the official talking point of the government or indeed the King.
But what Donald Trump won't like is what Sir Christian Turner said about the different levels of accountability in our systems, that the Epstein stuff hadn't touched people in the US in the way that it has touched people in the UK. I doubt he'd like that. But can I ask you, do we need to check the water supply in the ambassador's residence? Because you've had Kim Darroch being kicked out of the job because of, speaking, arguably too bluntly, in in notes rather than verbally. You've got Peter Mandelson, less about that the better, we know what that situation is. And now this, I mean, aren't ambassadors meant to be ambassadorial?
Yeah, I mean, we should note that I see in the FT, Sir Peter Westmacott, who of course was also a British ambassador to the US, is defending Christian Turner, saying it can be embarrassing when remarks intended for a private audience are made public, but I see no reason why what he said to a group of students a couple of months ago need affect his ability to continue the excellent start he has made in DC. And a Foreign Office spokesperson said these were private, informal comments made to a group of UK sixth form students visiting the US in early February. They are certainly not any reflection of the UK government's position. Now, that's an interesting statement because there's no defence of the ambassador.
Where's that
in
from,
that.
that statement?
That's from the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office to the FT. The FT says that Christian Turner was approached for comment. It doesn't look like he gave one. But just to do that, read that Foreign Office statement again. These were private, informal comments made to a group of UK sixth form students visiting the US in early February. They are certainly not any reflection of the UK government's position. They are not saying, as Sir Peter Westmacott is saying, I see no reason why what he said to a group of students a couple of months ago need affect his ability to continue the excellent start he has made.
But also, Simon, you know, you probably give talks to young students. I do from time to time. And, you know, it's not even just young students. If you give a talk, you can expect a phone to be on.
Well, absolutely, and especially, I mean, and even frankly, even if you don't suspect that a phone might be recording you, I mean,
somebody can still relate what he said,
was inheriting such a poisoned chalice here in Washington DC. I mean, it almost seems extraordinary that he was even entertaining meetings with a group of UK sixth form students in February, given that he was, just beginning to get to grips with the job. I would also point out,
I would have thought that an experienced person would be able to dance around those difficulties carefully and appropriately.
Well, absolutely, and he has experience, there's no question about it. He's lived and worked in the United States before. That's one of the reasons why he was picked by the Prime Minister to take over from Lord Mandelson. But given the storm clouds that had broken over that embassy, and my understanding is that morale at the embassy has been deeply damaged by the Mandelson affair and by everything that the staff at the embassy, who were working with Peter Mandelson and then of course had to pack his belongings up and see the ambassador shipped back to the UK, everything that they had gone through, the morale there was already very dented. I mean, whatever one thinks of the tenor of some of these comments, it's pretty extraordinary that you would be this outspoken this early in your tenure with a group of sixth form students and going to the heart of the central issue between the US and the UK. I mean, we all get so hung up on this special relationship phrase. It's become, a millstone, frankly, around everybody's necks. But here's Christian Turner saying we've got to move on from the notion of the special relationship, and that the only special relationship the United States has is with Israel. I mean, the US government would say that it's got a special relationship traditionally with the French as well as the UK. So I just think that it's going to create an enormous diversion of attention that neither the government nor the King and the Queen are likely to welcome at the very moment we are waiting for the King to arrive, presumably flanked by Ambassador Christian Turner, who must have learned, presumably within the last few hours, maybe the last couple of days, that this story was coming in the Financial Times. It's a deeply uncomfortable moment for him.
They might not have known, of course, that it was coming.
Well, they say he was approached for comment. So,
right,
and the fact that we know that the Foreign Office had issued this statement. I mean, the Whitehall certainly knew this was coming. Whether they knew it was coming today.
Another inquiry into an inquiry. The thing about that term, the special relationship, is it doesn't have to be a millstone, and in many ways, it is true that we do have a special relationship. In as much as he alluded to it, the history, the ongoing security and military cooperation that is very, very deep indeed and runs long as well. We know who the senior partner in it is, but many American generals over the years I've been doing this job speak incredibly highly about the British military and the work that they've done hand in hand. So it is a special relationship compared to lots of other countries. It just is. It doesn't have to be the single most. It doesn't have to be the special relationship in the way it was in 1949, whatever it is. But it is still a close relationship by any measure, isn't it?
Absolutely, and it is a relationship. It's a vital strategic relationship, as the government constantly points out. When you look at the degree of intelligence sharing, when you look at the degree of two-way trade, when you look at the degree of broader strategic alliances that the US and the UK government have in a whole variety of different areas, it is a critical bilateral relationship, and the health of it always depends on the nature of the Prime Minister and the President of the day. I mean, who would have imagined, for example, that Tony Blair and George W. Bush would ever find common cause, given that they came from completely different philosophical and ideological backgrounds, and yet they obviously did, and faithfully so, in deciding to jointly back the decision to go to war and topple Saddam Hussein in Iraq. I mean, Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan were ideological and philosophical soulmates, but they too had strains in their relationship over the Falkland Islands, over Grenada. They were not always peas in a pod together, even though I think historians tend to look back on that relationship often through rose-tinted spectacles. And then you have people from similar philosophical and ideological backgrounds who didn't get along so well, as we've seen an increasing strain developing between the Republican Party here in the United States and the Tory Party. And so the relationship always has a different patina and a different tone. I see that we are now seeing the marching bands making their way at the White House, making their way across the White House lawn, all sorts of martial music being played ahead of the arrival of the royal couple for the start of this White House state visit, the formal welcome ceremony that's going to take place. There will be comments coming in the course of the next few minutes from both the King and the President, and we'll hear how they characterise the relationship when they make their remarks.
Thank you very much indeed, Simon. There'll be comments coming shortly on our calls as well. Aaron says, fair play to Sir Christian Turner, showing he's capable of critical thinking and honesty. Would you prefer he lied to the students? That's from Aaron in Windsor appropriately. As he replaced Peter Mandelson, saying to an assembled group of students, has been reported in the FT now, that Israel is the only country with which the US has a special relationship. You've been texting on this as well as calling. I'll get to your calls in a second. The special relationship narrative has become farcical. It's hard to believe a former powerful empire such as the UK is reduced to being sycophants to the United States. The ambassador is just facing facts, stating facts, I should say. That's Jack in Dublin. Christian Turner is right, says Dave. Israel runs the USA. Well, Dave, I would say that's quite a leap from what Christian Turner actually said, which isn't that Israel runs the USA, but, you know, you do you. Derek says, what a shambles. I think that's about right. Fair play to Sir Christian Turner, showing he's capable of critical thinking. We read that one earlier from Anna. Why is the FT trying to embarrass the King in the UK like this? They've sat on that audio to release it as the King and Queen are preparing to visit the White House to make the most of a tabloid-level story. That's from Nick. And Andy asked the same question. Who's trying to sabotage the visit? Why release this now? Does it sabotage the visit? I don't think Israel is the only country with which the United States has a special relationship. It has always had a special relationship with Israel. That's nothing new. James in Barnes, hello.
Good afternoon, Sheila. Clearly not the best of times to say it, but I completely concur with his thoughts. And I wonder if it's actually what Keir Starmer and David Lammy actually clearly think by the way Trump has behaved in the last 4 months. But obviously they are unable to say, and I'm not saying he was saying it at their behest, but when was the last time you saw a British Prime Minister being treated as an equal in the Situation Room in the Pentagon with the President of the United States? Because I don't remember it, but there was Mr. Netanyahu sitting there, not even opposite, not even at the back of the table, but as an equal alongside President Trump. And I think that in itself shows that the special relationship Israel has is on another level to what the British
Okay, I'll leave that thought. I think things are about to begin. All the flags, the Union flag and the American flag, are all being raised around the red carpet, and the seating area has just been wiped again. So something tells me that we're about to see the King and the Queen and the President and the First Lady, Foreign Secretary. Very smart to hear our own national anthem in just a lady, and the Queen comes along as well. She's also wearing expected to be made at the state banquet later. They've been brutal and they've been let them sit on wet seats with those who have shaken the British national anthem. Here it comes. Let's listen.